Hi. Hello. Happy Wednesday. Let's try this again. It looks like the connection might be better now, hopefully. So, okay. I'm back. Yes, I'm back. Thank you, master teacher. I gotta fix my contact. It's like cloudy or something. I can't see. Hi, Veronica. Thank you. Thanks y'all for joining. Thank you for coming back. Hey, Mr. B. Hope you're feeling well. Okay, so I don't yet see my guests that I've invited to join me this evening, but once again, good evening, happy Wednesday, and welcome to the Becky Brown Girl Show. I'm your host, and tonight we're talking about men, mental health, and vulnerability. So it'll be a little bit more serious maybe than, some other topics I might typically discuss, but we'll see. I always like to keep it a little bit lighthearted. So, in any case, so let me see. This is probably one of my, okay, Fritz. So hang tight, Fritz. Let me just do my, intro, because I do have a couple of guests that I've invited to join on to talk about this as well. But, so as I started to say in the last time I came on a few minutes ago, the reason I wanted to talk about this topic is because on a few different shows that I've done, the subject of men and their mental health and the inability to be vulnerable around others has come up sort of in passing. And, of course, on social media, there's a lot of commentary on men being sassy and soft nowadays because they might be more expressive about their feelings. And so, first of all, I think, those conversations are kind of ridiculous. Well, sometimes. Like I've seen some where they talk about men, it's sassy for a man to carry an umbrella. It's sassy for a man to wear gloves. Like, come on, man. It's sassy for a man to breathe. Like, stop already. But anyway, so I really kind of wanted to talk about where it is that men do have the ability to be their most authentic and vulnerable selves. Some will say, around their homies. Some will say there is no place for them to be that way, except maybe, when they're alone. And I feel like everyone should have an outlet, because at the end of the day, we're all human. Ideally, you have somebody that allows you, to confide in them. If you don't necessarily have someone, in your family, in your friend circle, your romantic partner, maybe a therapist. Listen, I'm a big advocate of therapy. So, because they're sworn, to an oath. Some may confide in faith leaders. We can talk about that point as well. But the point is that you should have some sort of outlet to express the emotions that you might not feel comfortable sharing with everyone, because when you don't and you repress your emotions, they sometimes manifest themselves in other negative ways. Now, let me say, I am not an expert on psychology. I do go to therapy. So any observations that I might share are just like based on my observation and anecdotal experience. And I'm not a man, so I cannot speak for what men may go through. Women obviously have a much different ability, and they're not judged for it, to express emotions that, again, like we're able to show our humanity in a way that I think men, especially Black men, aren't always able to do. So once again, I'm not the expert, so allow me to invite some of those folks on who offered to join me. But before I do that, I have a question for the fellas, and that is, when was the last time you cried? And hopefully you're willing to share in the comments. And what did you cry over, if you are willing to share? Don't get scared now. This is a safe space. So, please let me know, because it touches me when I see a man cry. Okay, so I got 3 folks to join me, and I think that Fritz, you would also be a great addition. So, first I'm going to add Andrew Granum, aka Father Drew. Father Drew has joined me on prior episodes. He is a husband, father, pastor, actor, entrepreneur, and podcaster, basically a jack of all trades. So I would like to add him first. I'm also going to be adding Wayne Andre Mundell, known on IG as I Am Next Level. Wayne is an author and a personal trainer. He's also a father. He was previously married, and I'm sure he'll talk about some of those, some of the many hats he's worn and wears. He also is a firefighter, personal trainer. He has many, again, different hats that he wears. So they can elaborate once I add them on. And I'm also going to add on Fritz. Sorry, Fritz, because Fritz was a last minute addition. So I don't have a bio on him. I know he's a dad. I know he has a job that, if he tells me what it is. So, so we're not even gonna get into all of that. But, okay, just really quickly before I add them, just let me go through these comments to see when folks said. So Fritz said, last time was October of last year. Rob Jr., 44, last time I cried when I was born. Come on, man. He's been looking for the doctor ever since. Sean Boone, I cried when I found out that I was diagnosed with cancer. That is awful. I'm very sorry to hear that. So I believe I saw a post that you made saying that it was in remission, though. So prayerfully, that is the case. And anyway, wishing you healing on your journey and positive thoughts. So hopefully you also have an outlet to express, the emotions that probably has put you through. But I've talked enough. Let me go on ahead and add the fellas, to add their lived experience. And I'll holler at you in a second. Okay, why is technology not being my friend tonight? Oh,
Let me see. Am I clear?
well,
Can you see me?
I see your buttons right now. You always
All
have like a sexy background going on.
right. Sexy background. That's
Channeling
what it's all about.
Okay. I see your buttons right now. You always have like a sexy background going on. Okay, so I don't know why I can hear. Oh,
Right.
well, because
That
you
was
have
on
on
mine.
headphones. It's the headphones, I think.
No, I had it on my iPad.
Oh,
It
okay.
was bleeding through. Yeah.
So you good over there?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. So I'll start with Wayne. Are you done?
I'm done.
Is you
I'm done.
finished or is you
I'm
done?
finished and I'm done.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna actually start with Wayne, and I'll go. What's that? Counterclockwise. And you guys can all introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into this conversation. So, Wayne.
Well, I want to say good evening to everyone. I am Wayne. I'll go by It's Wayne Andre on IG. I am Next Level. I'm the founder of Next Level Training and Wellness. I'm a former firefighter, paramedic. I'm an author, but my biggest gift is sharing my positivity with the world. So,
Okay. Fritz.
Yeah, what's going on?
Okay, now you know you have to do a
Oh, this is the
little bit
introduction
of an
part.
intro
My
for this
fault. I'm
one.
sorry. Oh, also, yeah, I'm Fritz, 39, from Brooklyn. I work. You don't know what I do for a living. I work in the behavioral health space. So I work with mentally. I want to use my words carefully. So I work with people who have mental issues.
Okay. You,
Um,
use them
yeah,
carefully. Don't.
we have to be mindful. We have to be in a certain space when we navigate through those realms.
Well, so before I move on to Father Drew, I just want to preface what I'm saying here, because I typically will say this is, once again, I'm not an expert in like psychology or mental health or anything like that. It's just something that's come up on prior shows that I thought would be a good topic to discuss. I'm also not a man, so I'm relying on the input from the fellas, because you have, the expertise of your gender that I do not have. But also I'm thinking more so from the perspective of, people who aren't necessarily dealing with a diagnosed issue, because again, I don't have the expertise. If you feel comfortable talking about that, fine. I will not, but I'll leave that to you. Now, moving on, if you were done. Were you
Yeah, that pretty much
done?
covered it. Yeah.
Okay. Um, Father Drew, floor is yours.
So how are y'all doing? My name is Andrew Granum. I go by Father Drew. I'm a minister. I'm an investor. I'm a husband and a father, and I like to inspire people.
Okay. Now, since you and Wayne just mentioned that well, first of all, thank you for joining me. I appreciate y'all. Since you both mentioned that you like to inspire people, um, I'm always curious for people who, if it's either your natural sort of personality, or, you have to kind of do your own methods to hype yourself up. What about when you get down? Like, how do you deal with, the ups and downs in your own moods? Do you have somebody that you talk to? Do you pray? Do you meditate? Do you talk to a therapist? Like, how do you deal with when you're not in that space?
well, I have a routine to fill my own cup. I know that I'm a giver. I know that I'm naturally going to give. So you cannot give from a space that's empty. So I got a morning routine, a nighttime routine, so that I don't never know what's going to happen during the day. I can finish the day and I can end the day with. I can begin the day and end the day with a routine that's always going to fill my cup. My journal. I pray. I meditate. I always before I reach out to anybody, before I give, I make sure I pour something for myself first. So that's how I stay in this space of, it's a constant flow. I don't necessarily look at, I don't necessarily look for other people to inspire me. I actually get more inspiration from giving it away. So once I get in the space of pouring into my cup, when I give it away, that actually like inspires me more. It's like when a bird flies, it actually gets more energy when it flies. I per
Mhm.
se, when I'm in my gift, when I'm in my flow, I actually get more energy that way.
Okay. Okay. Father Drew and Fritz, I'd like you to answer that as well, even though, that's not necessarily what you do. I'm just curious.
I mean, I like to spend a lot of time in meditation, um, whether that's um, just quiet quiet moments, whether it's in the car. Um, you know, prayer is important to me. Making sure that my focus is right. Um, I'll say, it's a good question because my mother passed last year, right? and
You talked about.
it was a difficult time. But I still have, kids. I still have a wife. I still have a job. I still have people to inspire and to pour into. Um, and for me, as I have to make sure that my cup is full if I'm pouring out. Right. I can't pour out of an empty cup. Um, and so it wasn't an easy balance, the last several months because
Right.
there were times when my cup was definitely empty and I still had to pour. Um, and when you have to pour and you don't have a full cup, anything can come out. Anything can come out in any type of way. Um, but making sure that I got centered, meditation, therapy was important. Reading, making sure that I'm building myself up, like all these things, I feel like are important to me to make sure that I can, be the person that my community needs me to be.
Yeah, well, again, both of you have, situations where you're having to, like, by nature of what you do, like, inspire other people. So I like I said, I just imagine that it makes it even more challenging when you're dealing with something, especially, like what you described,
Hey,
father June.
listen, I'll tell you one thing. I was telling a friend of mine, when you're a pastor, you're a minister, when you get up to preach, when you come down and people are coming up to you and saying, great job, great message, you're inspired, you're anointed, all those types of things, that's a dopamine rush. And I told my friend, Mondays are depression day for pastors because once you get that rush on
Mm,
Sunday, you come down on Monday, and
right.
so it's always a balance. And I think if you know that, if you realize the nature of that type of balance, that type of um, you know thing that you're dealing with, if you have that perspective ahead of time, then you're in a better position to deal with it. If you don't realize, like, all right, this is why I'm going to feel, a little depressed on Monday.
Right.
When it hits you, it's just going to hit you. If you know it's coming, then you can prepare for it.
Okay. Makes sense. So, Fritz, how do you deal with the blues, whatever they, whatever might cause you um to feel down?
I have a great support system with a lot of my brothers that I grew up with. So we're obviously we're in a group chat. So usually if one of us are, I feel like that's usually a safe space. So we'll get in there. We'll voice our dismay. We'll talk about things from being fathers, from being things that are going on in our jobs, things that are possibly stressing out with our significant others. This is a place where we could just be open and honest with our feelings, and there's no judgment. It's a very open space where we could just just talk.
I feel like again, I was thinking because I've heard men say, some men um or some women will say about men that they think they don't always like women, like, to hang out with, just on a sort of like the homey vibe, even if it's like your significant other. They'd rather confide in and they're closer to their friends. And maybe it's because, I mean, that might be one of the reasons why. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about somebody that you're married to or, I assume in a serious relationship with, but I've heard that said. Now, maybe these women don't know what they're talking about, but sometimes it does seem like some guys who might not, you know, I don't know. They seem like they're closer to their friends than they would be maybe to their.
You you gotta understand there's certain stresses that black men are exposed to on an everyday basis that the black woman isn't. It's just almost so it's almost a situation where your brothers have experienced it. We could talk about it. We could have that kind of discussion. I'm not taking anything away from the black woman in that sense, but it's just a different level of things we could break down.
I also feel like again, specifically for black men in particular, because society sort of tries to disempower, um,
Mhm.
Black men. Not that y'all are powerless, because you're powerful kings, but I feel like, again, across the board, they want to try to keep you down. So when you come home, and which is why I think a lot of men desire peace, and that's something that they tend to list at the top of their priorities in a mate, is somebody who's going to bring peace to them, because they deal with so much stress and strife and whatever else that they may deal with, when they're out in the world. And because I've heard them say, like, they don't want more fighting at home. They don't want more stress and strife, and that also doesn't make them feel maybe like they can be their most uh, authentic selves. But one thing, I think he's on here too. I was chatting with my comic relief buddy Wes earlier, and he was talking about therapy, and how women will say that they want certain things in a man. Like, we want a man who is sensitive, right? Um, but we often want a man who's sensitive to our feelings,
Yeah.
right? But that doesn't necessarily he doesn't necessarily um, sort of convey that same sensitivity with respect to his own feelings, like, so that you can see it. So it's like we want that, but then we also kind of want him not to fully express his own emotions, because then they think he's soft, or I'm not speaking about anyone in particular that I know. uh anyway, so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that I don't think that I just personally I don't think I know some may agree or disagree, but I don't think that I'm gonna run home and tell my girl my problems. Not because um I don't deserve that, but she's only going to be able to see her life through her lens as a woman. So I personally wouldn't. I mean, I personally think that even in society, people are or especially women are already subconsciously programmed. Even if you don't think he's soft, you're already subconsciously programmed to see that as a vulnerability. And I personally wouldn't run and tell my girl all my problems, because and the reality of it is you got to you got to stand solid regardless. Now, this is where I journal, this is where I go to therapy. Like, and on the other side of that, women are dealing with a lot more than they have to. Women are working full time, they've got their own problems. So here I am, supposed to be the rock, putting another rock on her plate. So me personally, I just don't see that as a good idea. It may sound good in theory, but the reality of it is that you're supposed to be the rock. I personally would go see a therapist, journal. I journal like crazy, because that's a healthy outlet for me to express my emotion. I don't want my. Uh, I think that, how can I explain this? I read this in a book. Like, feminine energy is like the ocean, right? It can be calm, it can go back and forth, it can be wavy, right? Masculine energy is more like a pillar inside of an ocean. So regardless if the wave goes back and forth, the pillar is always going to be solid. Like, when you go back and forth in emotion, that's more of a feminine energy to me. I personally don't want to be in that space with my woman, right? Especially if I'm supposed to be the pillar, if I'm supposed to be the rock. I can't run around in the way, because guess what? She's going to at some point come out of that emotion. And if I'm running around with the emotion, I'm no longer solid. You can't even see me. You don't know who I am. So I don't personally believe that, um, you go to God, you go to a therapist, you don't, I personally wouldn't do that.
So, just really quickly, and then I want to hear what Fritz and Father Drew think. But are you telling me then that and you know, I respect everyone's position. Once again, I'm not a man. I don't know what it's like to live as a man. Um, that's yeah. But so have you never cried in front of a woman?
I have, and probably was one of the worst decisions I've ever made. Gonna be the worst, like the worst decision I ever made in my life. So I mean, like, you know, I would never do that again. So, you know, once you learn, you don't repeat that same mistake. I think it's desperate. You're like, okay, at the time it might feel good, but the reality of it is that what what are you going to get out of that? Absolutely nothing. But she's going to remember that. That's going to be subconsciously uh, planted in her mind forever. You're never going to get that back. So I would never do that. You know, you go, if you got to cry, go get in the shower, cry in the shower, like go do something up. But you don't go cry if like
I
now
think,
for what?
I think it depends on the situation.
If it's then my, you know what I'm saying, like, you know, like did I
if you
get, you
just
know,
lost a loved one,
something happened to like my
yeah,
mother or something like that. But if it's like, you know, something happened at work, I got, you know, happy, like, what you crying for? No, absolutely not.
yeah, you
It's
can't.
not. It's not. It's all as bad.
Oh
You
my
know, they
God.
even if your girl said, okay, you can cry in front of me, don't.
Don't.
I promise you. I promise you. It is not. It is not. It's gone. You're gone. You're done.
Okay, so I want Fritz and Father Drew to weigh in, but so I think I said earlier, I do think it's endearing to, I said that, to see a man cry, but it depends on the situation. Like, I'm not talking
But
about
That's in
this is the
theory.
thing.
That's in theory. That sounds good. You
This
don't
is
want to see your man cry.
saying
You don't.
if you lose a loved one, like you said, I mean, if you don't cry in a situation like that, I'm concerned, especially if it's like a parent, or, you know, God forbid, a child, or somebody that's like really close, or like a very close friend or something. I would expect to see you shed a tear, because
That's
then I'm
because
like,
you're
are you?
looking through. That's because you're looking through life through a feminine lens, right? So you're
But
looking
a
through life,
death, you
and
can't cry
no,
for
yeah.
I'm
death.
not saying you
No,
can't,
absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
I'm not saying you can't, right? I'm not saying that you can't, right? I'm just
And
saying
you probably
you're looking at.
should.
Yeah, you definitely should. But I personally wouldn't. I'm just not gonna sit up there and cry for my girl. I'm just not.
Wait a
My
minute. So
wife, I'm just not. What do you?
Prince Khalil said, "Any tears brought upon the presence of a woman can and will be used against
Yes,
you."
That's the thing.
absolutely.
That's the thing. Women, like men and women, are wired differently, right? So I can have an emotional moment and it'll pass and it's gone. It's out the door, right? Whether it's anger, whether it's you know, sadness, whether I'm being vulnerable, whatever it is. If I have that, if me and my guys get into it, we can get into it and we can move on, right? Women don't move that way. They hold it. They hold it
Yes,
forever, right?
forever.
That's a
Just
fact.
think about the way in which y'all deal with your girlfriend. When your girlfriend takes you off, that's going up. It's going up in a frame on the wall, right? So when you going through something, if you when you show a certain type of vulnerability to your woman, it might be a little different if it's your wife, but it's still the same type of thing. You're gonna hold that.
Okay, so just really quickly, and Fritz, I'd like you to weigh in, because I feel like you might feel a little bit more comfortable just based on what you said earlier. Um, um, damn, what was I gonna say?
I'm not saying I'm not uncomfortable. Like I've gotten emotional in front of my wife, right? I've been married
It's your
maybe
wife.
18 years. Yeah, 18 years this year,
I,
right? I mean that's my universe. That's my world. I don't know if I would advise it. You have to be vulnerable if you're going to be in a relationship,
Yeah.
right?
yes,
You you
correct.
you you have to be vulnerable. Um, Whatever you hide, you can't hide forever. It's going to show somewhere because this person is watching you
Yep.
everywhere. and they're watching how you operate. They see the parts of you that you can't see. I told my friend the other day, I've never seen it. I don't know what the back of my head looks like, right? And he disagreed with me, and then he told a story later on that he had a bald spot in the back of his head, and he didn't know. And I said, exactly what I'm talking about. You don't know what the back of your head looks like. Your woman, she's the one who pointed it out to you. She thought you knew. It's been there for as long as she's known you, but you've never known that. And so your vulnerabilities will come out in certain ways. But this is the thing, right? I was reading something earlier. When you hit me up earlier, I was listening to a podcast, and the rapper, Christian rapper Lecrae, he was talking about how he experienced 6 of the 8 types of childhood trauma, right? And when you experience trauma as a child, the things that you go through and your upbringing, those will come out in your relationship, right?
I agree. Yep.
And you have to deal with them, or your wife will, or your girlfriend will, or your children will. You know what I mean? And so they're going to see it somewhere. Release it.
I agree.
If you release it on your own, and then a positive way, then it won't be released on them in a negative way.
I agree. And actually, you just reminded me of the point that I wanted to make earlier really quickly, and then I'd like Fritz to chime in, which was the whole point. Like, because because there's a perception just, socially, and I think particularly for Black men, that they have to be hyper masculine and like, very macho and very alpha, because of, again, the way they're like perceived generally in society, unfortunately. Then sometimes they take that and bring it into the home, um and then because that's our expectation, then you're right, we don't allow them to show their vulnerability, but they still have those feelings. Like, y'all still have feelings that you're not necessarily expressing. So you all seem to have like productive ways of dealing with them, but not every man has that. Like, so sometimes they'll, choose more destructive ways to express it, like, addictions, with drugs and alcohol, or they become womanizers, or they might be abusive. I mean, those are extreme circumstances, but like, you have to find a healthy way to let those things out, or else, to your point, they're gonna manifest themselves in more negative ways. And like I said, those are extreme, but I mean, they
I mean, some are extreme, but people have vices for reasons, right? Some people who might be womanizers, it's not because they're just horrible people, but they have a sense of abandonment somewhere. You know what I mean? And now when they go through things, they're looking for the protection or the affection from a woman or from whoever, but it just might be easier to get it from a woman. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that
Question.
I don't have all great coping mechanisms. Some of them are negative. When I catch myself
judging. I mean, I drink, but I'm talking about like doing any of these things to excess. And I'm also, not talking about like using hard drug. Look, I'm not
yeah,
judging, just saying maybe those are not the most productive ways, to deal with your emotions. But if you have no place to deal with them, then that's might be, the way people deal with them. Maybe some people exercise, which is a great way to release your
yeah.
stress, right, Wayne?
My question is, why is only crying seen as vulnerability? Like, me exposing my faults, me exposing, me holding myself accountable to things that I've done wrong. Those are areas of vulnerability. So vulnerability, people are looking at vulnerability as only, well, you got to be crying. That is not the only way to be vulnerable. Actually, like a man exposing his flaws, things, and say, hey, I'm going to work on it. That's the ultimate sign. This is a weakness in my armor, and I'm showing you that. That's vulnerability. Like, you know, crying doesn't necessarily mean you're being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Crying means you might just be hypersensitive in that particular emotional state. There's a spectrum of emotions, like, you know what I mean, happy to being enlightenment. You're gonna go through all ranges of emotion. You having the ability to like identify those and being and knowing where you are all being vulnerable. If I acknowledge that I'm mad, I'm acknowledge that I'm happy, I'm acknowledging that I'm sad. Those are that's emotional intelligence, understanding what state you're in. Just because you start crying doesn't mean you're being vulnerable. It just means that you haven't learned any other way to express that emotion. I can be frustrated. I could be, somebody can expose something about me. I can choose to cry about it. Or I can say, crying, depending on what it's about, is a habitual habit. Somebody might just, okay, after they've been exposed to this, now this is my habit. I cry. I might go work out. You know what I mean? So vulnerability doesn't necessarily have to mean you're crying. Just exposing where your weaknesses are is a form of vulnerability. And saying, here, this is where I am. I don't know,
Yeah.
my hair felt, those, like you said, a bald spot, and that's being like something about you, right? That is outside of perfection, right? Where you're giving not only where you're giving yourself grace to see yourself for where you are, and you're okay with it,
Yeah.
right? You're okay with showing that person that side of you. Most people walk around with these personas or a representation of who they project who they're supposed to, who the world, who they supposed to be, what they want to be. That when you show somebody who you are, that's a level of vulnerability. That's actually the highest level of vulnerability. It's far more vulnerable than crying.
Yeah. And
You're right. You were right. Go ahead, Father Drew.
and I was gonna say, and when you're vulnerable, you have to do so in moderation, right? Otherwise, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot. I
Fact.
mean, because when we're talking about relationships, because women can't handle everything, right?
No, nope.
Like when women can't handle, they can't handle the truth. I'm not saying that you gotta lie, but I'm saying they can't handle. Women can't handle everything, and so as if you meet somebody on the street, whether it's a man or a woman, if they tell you everything about themselves in the first 2 minutes, then you're gonna be like, oh, all right. You know what I mean?
True.
Same thing in relationships. You have to wisdom, expose who you are, but do so in wisdom, do so in moderation, because whatever you say, like you said, brother, can and will be used against you at some point.
By
You know
the
what I
way,
mean?
y'all think it's only done in the reverse. I mean, y'all think it's only done a woman against a man. And yes, women can be sharp tongued. Ask me how I know. However, men can do the same thing too, because I remember, and to the point you made about like a relationship sort of being like the layers of an onion. Like you peel them back slowly, but
Mm-hmm.
the level that you're peeling back your side of the onion should match how the level that the other person is peeling it back. So if you like done split off half the onion and that person is like barely taking the skin off, then yeah, now they have all this ammunition that they could potentially use against you later, and they do it too. Okay,
Now,
that's
but
super
see,
sassy, by the way. But anyway,
yeah, see,
carry on.
yeah, it's a little sassy for men to do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the whole onion analogy is not you peeling yourself off, right? Like as you learn your partner, you're peeling back their layers. They're exposing their layers to you, right? And it's a process. It's a two-person job. Um, but you could also be a little too hasty and try and rip back layers of your partner just to see who they are, see what they're about, see what their past is, see what their history is. You know what I mean? And that's damaging as well. If you start talking to a young lady, you want to know how many bodies she got who she's been with, all that type of stuff. Like relax. We're on our I'm in my 40s. I don't know how old you brothers are. Like we're up there. People have past. People have histories. All right, deal with it and move on. Just understand that. But if the person who you're with, if you dig them, if you like them, then meet them in this moment. You know what I mean? You don't have to judge them based off of the many races that they've run in the past and the many journeys that they've been on. Like we evolve as people, and so yeah, it takes patience, I believe.
So, Fritz, I would like you to chime in from your now I don't know if you again if you feel comfortable sort of sharing from your professional background, um,
Mhm.
your experience with how with healthy ways for men to um express their vulnerability or
Well, I think a lot of it stems from how we were raised. Because as boys growing up, you're told like boys don't cry, like man up, don't
Yeah.
boys don't cry, you don't cry. So hearing that from young, you internalize that boy becomes a man, and he no longer knows how to show his vulnerability. He doesn't know how to express it in a way where is this even I was told I can't do this, so I got to man up.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the sports realm, when we playing sports on the basketball team, like yo, man up. Like, was like you can't. There's no safe space. So if your safe space is in which your partner, because you can't express it there, your safe space is in which with some of your brothers, you can't express it there. So most of these men, they're trying to find ways. They're trying to pivot in different directions, and a lot of them are somewhat lost. And that's why we're in a situation right now where a lot of black men are committing suicide.
Yeah.
Like so it's like, where do they go?
And that's the thing. Where do they
Where do
go?
they go?
Yeah.
That's the
I,
problem. You can't go to your brothers because they might clown you. You can't go to the people. So where do you go?
but look, you talking about going to your brothers. I read an article this morning that said that a lot of men, 15% of men, don't have any friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
15% of men don't have any friends. Like guys are celebrating their birthdays at home by themselves.
Nobody there.
They don't have any friends. Like at that level, who do you turn to if you're going through something?
well
Who can you even
you,
laugh with? You know what I mean?
you know
As
what's
opposed
ironic
to
about
cry
that
with.
though is the number of men who will get online talking about yeah you women gonna die alone and yada 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 and you gonna be a cat lady you better pick you one of them men in your DM and try to scare them into into getting into a relationship with anybody. But I've seen statistics that talk about how a lot of men end up old and alone, and like if they're in a nursing home or something like that, nobody comes to see them because they didn't have any friends or they didn't have or they weren't close with their family or whatever the case. So
Mm-hmm.
so a woman might be single, she might not have a man as her companion, but
But she has a
she
community.
she nurtures those friendships and and the family ties. Not every woman, but
Yeah.
comparatively speaking, so they're the ones that that tend to end up, if they're not married, or don't have close family or whatever, they're the ones that tend to end up in the situation like you're describing. The irony, anyway. So
I mean, that's not new though. Men have always, I mean, since being of maybe because it's on social media, but men have always been okay with dying alone. I don't think that's a new. I don't think that's
And we were all gonna
a new thing.
die
I
well,
mean,
alone.
we all gonna
hey,
die
We
alone.
I
I
were
don't
mean,
all
know
gonna
about
yeah. I
that.
mean, like I don't like when people say that. Like, I mean, even when
Men have
men
been
try to
okay with.
weaponize it for women, oh, you're gonna be a cat lady, you're gonna die alone. I think like that's just really projecting, you know, um, like a scare tactic, right? But I don't, when people are like, oh, you're gonna die alone. I mean, like, you know,
yeah,
what
I
is that?
am.
I don't. I mean, what is
yeah,
that? That I
basically.
mean, like, I think the idea. I think if people really like men dying alone or having for not having friends. Here's the a sharp reality is that as a man, and some may disagree with me, you're not necessarily born with a certain level of value. You got to go out there and make an impact on the world. You got to impact people, right? You got to go women are born with certain gifts, right? You don't have to necessarily, and I take this the wrong way, but
you create your value.
You're you don't have to go out. You could just be pretty. You could just be smart. You're already going to have an innate value that the world gives you, right? And most men, right, if they don't do the personal development, they don't work on themselves, they don't go out and make their impression on the world and create value for themselves, right? You're you basically making yourself a prisoner, right? You're making yourself a prisoner because, all right, I don't want to go connect with people. I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to do this. You actually have to go do that work. And that's where, I'm not on you say the word high. I know that's got a bad statement of high value, right? But you got to go out there and create value. You got to go out there and impact people. You got to go out there and you got to go make friends. I mean, you got to go do that work. And if you get in a space where you're just content with what you're doing, where you are, then you don't necessarily create any value. So you're not going to have friends. You're not going to have people that come looking for you, right? You as a man, most men will tell you, you got to go out there and make an impact. You got to go out there and develop yourself as a man. That's just a part of the deal.
So I disagree with you because they're men of value who have created value for themselves in their professions, in their standings in the community. They created income and wealth for themselves, but they don't have friends, right? Because
I'm not saying from a financial standpoint. You got to go out there and touch some lives. If you don't go out there and touch any lives, you're not going to have any friends.
But touching lives and having someone touch you in return on a personal level is two different things, right? So I'm a minister. I'm always affecting people, but a lot of ministers that I know, they don't have a lot of close friends because there's a vulnerability that they can't really they can't be vulnerable with everybody, right? They can't open themselves up to everybody. And so you have situations where you might be of value to a lot of people and bring value to the world, but at the end of the day, when you need to watch a game with somebody, there's no one there. You need to share a funny story or a moment or have a moment with somebody. There's no one there. You know what I mean? And so I have to disagree with the very first point that you made that men are okay with dying alone.
Well, I'm not saying being okay with it. It's a reality. I mean, wherever you decide to agree with it or not, wherever you decide to accept of it, that's the reality. You know what I mean? Just like this, where the sun rises, it's just something. Wherever you agree with it, it doesn't matter. It's just the reality of life. It's something that you can accept it or not, but that's just what it is.
That they will die alone, or that they are okay with it.
Oh, I don't think nobody was okay with it. I'm just saying that's just the reality of it.
So if I can just jump in really quickly, with respect to one of the points that you made, Wayne, I agree that yes, socially men are sort of taught that they have to do something in order to
be of value.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't agree. Look, I have a son. I raised a son. He's very valuable just by his existence. But in the outside world, right? Perhaps they might feel differently. Like, what have you accomplished? As a man. Now, granted, he's still young, but yeah. So I understand that. But the point that you made about like a woman sort of, just having to be attractive, that has a shelf life, right? Young women are valued for their appearance. I mean, I think women, yes, are valued for their appearance because men are visual and all that type of stuff. But after a while, even if you old and fine, Um, even then, it's like, all right, well, you cute or whatever, but like they're always looking at the youngest, finest, next young thing. So even that has a shelf life too, right? So your value also starts to decline according to society standards, as you're aging. So you have to start accomplishing things as well. Just saying. Anyway, but I digress. Um So before we wrap up, um, I would like each of you to share, again, sort of tools that you think are helpful for, um, for being able to express your vulnerability. Because I agree, Wayne, that crying is not the only way that you can that you can be vulnerable. Also, I want to address some of these comments, but maybe y'all want to be mindful of, where and who you're doing it in front of, because everybody is not going to be receptive to you to you doing that. But wait, one final thing I wanted to say. I'm sorry. I don't think anybody. I think we all have to be able to regulate our emotions, men and women.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about emotional intelligence. So it's not just about just whatever you're feeling, just constantly being in your feelings all the time. Like, we're adults. We're not children. You can't have a tantrum every time something doesn't go your way, throw yourself on the floor and like, and do your fists like this on the ground. Like, and you can't cry every time you're upset about something. I mean, there are circumstances that warrant that level of a response, but like, we all have to learn how to regulate our emotions. That doesn't mean you're robotic. That doesn't mean you're emotionless. It also doesn't mean like every time you feel something, like you were saying earlier about having an emotion and letting it pass, that you have to like go all in either. And like I said, I think that applies to both men and women. But anyway, so your final thoughts on um, you know, managing your emotions, being vulnerable, your mental health. How do you you know, how do you all deal
Can,
with?
can I just respond to a comment
Please.
real quick? Christian Music said, we just need to manage our expectations when it comes to expressing vulnerability. Men carry pressure, but we can't expect empathy from those who don't carry that same pressure. And that's a very good point.
It
And
is.
that's part of the point that I'm making when I say, you have to be vulnerable in moderation, right? Because your wife isn't carrying what's on your back, right? If you're saying it's heavy, fine, she'll hear you saying it, but she can't see that. She can't feel that. She can't feel it for you. So her response may not be what you expect it to be. Plus, she's a woman. Men and women are different. I mean, her response naturally is not going to be the same response that you have. And so, in order to keep harmony, sometimes you just have to realize, like, okay, she's not going to return what I'm giving her the same way that I'm expecting it. So I can either know that ahead of time, or I may just have to, fall back on what it is that I'm sharing in the moment, and find some other outlet or some other positive outlet, or someone else to speak to, even if it's professional help. I'm 100% advocate for therapy as well. So if you gotta call the lady, call the lady.
Yes, the lady.
Oh, lady.
Wait, I have one question that's going to take this off on a tangent for a little bit. And then I wanted to respond to some of these comments. Do you think, besides just the desire for some new cat, that this is a reason why some men might cheat and be infidels, because they don't feel like the burdens, that they have, to side on, might be more willing to listen to than, than their wife. I mean, the wife is living the real life,
She's
right?
living the
The
real life.
So she's dealing with, with the stress and the strife and the struggle, that that the side, the side John just gets to see like the good times.
and
But maybe
and she can be accepting of whatever you're dishing out because she really doesn't have
You
to
gotta
deal with it,
deal
right?
with it.
So you're looking for acceptance. Your wife ain't going to accept everything. She's gonna come back and say, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. She's gonna give you more work. You know what I mean? The You don't have to change yourself or change your character or work on your flaws with this side person who's going to accept you for what it is. You know what I mean? And so yeah, it's a trap. It's a trap for that reason. And I think that's one of the reasons of many reasons why men might step up.
okay. Wait, let me just address some of these comments, and then Fritz and Wayne, I'd like you to share your final thoughts as well. So, okay. Sorry, folks in the comments. Okay, I'm like way behind. So, okay, Kamani says, "Oh, you trying to get you trying to get naysayers killed on this live, huh?" Nope. I didn't ask you to confirm. I was just saying, I wanted you to conjecture as to why, in a hypothetical world, in the Twilight Zone, you know what I mean? You know, why that might be. So, anyway. Okay. So, TSR photo says, in my 20s, I was scared to cry. In my 40s, I have much respect for my emotions and others' emotions. Gotta support each other. Right on, brother. Um, By the way, again, like I've seen, men cry, and I don't. I'm talking about like men who, I may have had a relationship with, or of course, like my baby. I mean, that's my baby. So, sorry, Darius, because I know you're on here, but I mean, um, but I'm not saying that a man can't cry. I know that's not the only way you can show
Yeah.
vulnerability. I just don't want you to like. I don't want to feel like anytime like something is going wrong and you can't deal with the pressure, you're going to have a meltdown. Like, no, that doesn't make me feel confident in your ability to lead me. That doesn't
Listen,
make me feel confident. I'm sorry. I'm
when
not
when
saying that you can't cry. Just you can't be doing it all the time for any old reason. That's just,
listen,
sorry. I mean,
I might cry if I know you're gonna talk my ear off if for the rest of the night, right? So if a man is vulnerable, right? If a man wants to share something, he may just want to share it and not have to talk about it for the next 4 hours, right?
mhm,
Like he might just want to. All right, this is what happened. If we have to go ring around the rosy and go deeper, like the Cosby Show, dig deeper. If we got to keep digging deeper and digging deeper, then you're gonna dig up some emotions, right? So I think that women also have a responsibility as being a part of a two-person relationship. You have to the same way men have to fall back and make sure that the personalities mesh and mend correctly. Like women have to do the same thing. Like, all right, let me not push. Let me not try and push buttons to get emotional reactions because an emotional being and I respond to emotion a certain way, right? Women like to vent. Women can talk to each other and be emotional the whole time, right? Because they need that.
mm,
Men aren't the same way, right? So if you're just trying to hit emotional touch points the whole time, you don't know what the emotions what's going to come out, right? It's not going to be what you're expecting from the conversation. You know what I
right.
mean? It might be, oh, you pulled out the emotions and now, oh, this nigga cried. We were talking about A and B and he cried. He cried because of a long day of work. Now you going back talking to your girlfriends about how he cried when you tried to get him emotional about, hey, what's going on? You can share. Like, nah, if you can't handle the truth, don't ask for it. Right? I'm sorry.
Laughing.
I'm sorry.
I'm not laughing at men crying because I don't want y'all to think, I'm just a heartless wench. It just sounds funny the way y'all are saying it. I mean, like I said, I
Or he
don't.
got emotional, right? Y'all can't handle emotions. You can't handle yourself and your spouse or in your partner, right? You don't want to. I'm a man. I don't want my wife to act like me, right?
Fair.
Women don't want their men to act like them, right?
That's also
But
fair.
That's a fact.
but you still want to connect, right?
Yeah.
You still want to have some cohesiveness. You want certain chemistry, but there's the opposite reactions of elements that provide that chemistry. It's not all the same thing. All the same elements doesn't create anything new, right? You need different elements in there, and so you have to part of relationships. And then somebody else made a comment talking about how when we were talking about the peeling back of the onions, you have to be patient with the growth that your partner goes through because they're changing, but you're changing as well, right? And so you have to come to grips with who you are, who you're turning into, who you're developing into. And if you can understand yourself and you can understand your partner, then you won't try and recreate them in yourself. A lot of times that's what we're trying to do because that's our comfort zone. We know our own comfort zone. You know what I call it? I call it there was a movie. It might have been like a Superman movie when the aliens came down. They were trying to change the atmosphere in the Earth, right? So that the aliens could live there. That's what we do when we come into relationships, right? We already have our comfort zone. We try and change the atmosphere to make it comfortable for us, and your partner's trying to do the same exact thing. And if you don't realize that you're doing it, then you're going to always bump heads. And so you have to be super accepting of who they are as individuals, right? To the point that you're sacrificing of yourself. And if both partners aren't sacrificing, then it's not going to work.
Well, I was about to say it has to be on both sides. But to the point I made originally, I think that women will say they want a man to be sensitive.
Until it's time,
well, really
for him to be sensitive.
Really what they want is a man who is sensitive to their needs and to be able to express whatever feelings that he's having in the manliest way possible, whatever that means. Fritz, I feel like you didn't get to add a final thought, so please.
I would say my final thought is just I want more men to obviously pour back into themselves and find a space where they can feel comfortable being vulnerable, whether it's being vulnerable with your partner or being vulnerable with your boys. Like having uncomfortable conversations that get you in a space where you feel heard. Because a lot of brothers don't feel heard. And that's why they go through what they go through, because they feel like nobody's seeing them. They want to be felt, they want to be seen.
Yeah.
So if you're navigating through this world and you're stepping outside and you feel like nobody's seeing you, that could be detrimental.
Yeah,
and that's why we're seeing the spikes in terms of suicide. So it's like I want brothers to make sure they seek therapy. They meditate, they journal, they pray, they go work out, get that dopamine, whatever they need to do, because it doesn't feel like what I've been seeing is that they don't feel seen.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest part. And we're conditioned to be protectors and providers, and that's a lot of stuff on our back. We're fathers, we're brothers, we're a lot of, we have a lot of hats. So when we navigate through this world and we don't feel like accepted in certain ways, it's gonna wear. So that's when emotions start to come out. And now all of a sudden you can't be you can't show, you can't cry. So it's like it's it's just a weird space to be in. I feel like you should be vulnerable with your lady and her not to look at you a different way or look down at you. So as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you holding stuff down. I had a moment. I'm gonna get right back to it.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Y'all can cry on
Oh
here
no,
if you want to.
I'm good. I'm good.
No,
I'm just saying.
no, but seriously, I mean, I think you really did make a great point because the bottom line is like y'all are human just like we're human. You have
Yeah.
emotion just like we have emotions, and everybody should have a place, an outlet, a way that they're able to express
Yeah.
them, and they don't feel judged, and they don't feel um like somebody's gonna use it against them later, or and yeah, I mean, like seriously, we we can't lose y'all, so we need y'all to have.
Like I said, I've seen my father cry when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
and but it was him
That is
crying on the sense of fact that he was the only provider for a family of four.
Right,
He felt that pressure,
right,
and I never looked. I was like, why is my father? I knew why he was
right.
crying because the pressure started getting too much, and I ain't
Yeah.
never look at him any different way. He was still doing what he was supposed to do. Sometimes you just succumb to life's pressures. Ain't nothing wrong with crying. Like
Yeah.
I said, there's other ways of showing vulnerability besides crying. I'm just using that as an
yeah.
I
example.
Yeah.
So
know, because we keep
it's just
talking about it.
it is what it is. I mean, I feel like the way if you want to cry, you want to let that out. I'm not gonna look at you like
Well,
you're soft. Like nah,
by the way, I'd rather that they be doing that than to beat somebody because they're so
because that's the other
frustrated,
route.
and they don't, right. But that's what I'm saying, like crying is a more cathartic way, and like when you cry, like them ugly cries, you feel so much better afterwards. Like maybe you shouldn't do that kind of crying in front of
not the
somebody.
not the Tyrese crying, not the not the because that Tyrese cry was bad. I don't know. I don't want to do none of that, but.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it's okay. So with respect to crying, right?
Tyrese
Look,
crying.
people, you got to do. Sometimes you gotta let it out. But
Yeah,
I still feel like
but
there's
that
a
doesn't
time
make
and a
you any. I
place.
don't. But we live in a society where I feel like that makes you lesser, and I don't get that. I don't
Yeah.
like. I don't. I never understood that. Like crying doesn't make you less of a man. Doesn't make you weak. Doesn't make you any of that. So I never
Well,
understood that
but I
concept.
also think it's more of a phenomenon, right, in our communities
Yes.
or
Yes.
in communities that um that sort of value hyper masculinity. I
Hmm.
am not, Latino, Latinx, but that's also a thing in some of those cultures as well. So, I think because hyper masculinity is, and being is the um an alpha man, with respect to like being in charge and all of that is sort of um put up as the objective, as the goal. Then people feel like, again, they don't have the space to show anything else, because then you're soft, you're sassy, you're a beta, um and whatever other names they might call you. But
Yeah.
anyway, I appreciate all of you joining me this evening, taking time out of your busy schedules and lives, and ministering to the people, inspiring the people, helping them, on with their mental health and so on. So, and then the other ways that you may assist them. So, thank you. Go follow these gentlemen. Father Drew, everyone put your IGs in the chat. I am next level, and Fritz Lux 84.
Yeah. That's
Is that correct? Yeah, but you guys can put your IG in chat. I mean, I'll tag you later anyway, but um thank you. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say before you sign off.
I'm gonna say this. I'm a real advocate of therapy. So I feel like, and there's a lot of different formats where it's not cost effective. So I think
Yes,
more
that's true.
men should explore those options. instead of like bottling things inside and just exploding later on, because that's not gonna serve anybody any help. So
Yeah.
that's like, well, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Go on Psychology Today. Find somebody in your area. Find somebody who might take your insurance. If not, find a group that you can join for group therapy or something.
I concur. And Wayne?
I didn't hear your question. Somebody tried to call me. What did you say last?
No, I was just asking if you had anything else you wanted to say before you
Oh, I would say, take a season of a separation. Not even if you're not saying if you're with a partner or not. I think that most of the time we are always wearing these roles and wearing these habits. Take some time to ask yourself, what do I want? What do I need? Right? And make that a part of like your routine. Most of the time, the stress comes from being a doer for others and not taking time to really ask yourself. You're in these, habitual roles. You never really take this time to say, what do I need? And you might like something new. You might, you might find out some things that you like. You might find some things about yourself that you don't like. And then when you do that, be vulnerable with yourself and say, hey, I'm going to change this about me.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the stresses from other people will just disappear because you'll be inspired by the development of yourself. So when you develop yourself and you fill yourself up, some of the stresses of the world, even when the world attacks you, you won't feel it as much because you've built yourself up. So I would say, like I never thought I was going to be, and I never thought I was going to be divorced, right? And I took a season, 19 months celibacy, and really just say, what do I need for me, and because I chose what I need for me for my foundation, I became so much better to other people. And some of the stresses that I thought were stresses, and some of the things that I thought that were attacking me, they disappeared because I became somebody else.
How, how long are you married?
I was married for 6 years. My ex-wife has a PhD in psychology.
Oh wow. She was
Yeah.
probably very
Oh, she's an amazing
well, we're
woman.
not
Listen,
talking about her. I'm just
my
saying.
ex-wife is an amazing woman, right? She's an amazing woman, and we're really great friends. We didn't have a bad marriage, so that was the hardest part for me. That we came into a marriage heavy loaded with our own stuff from past relationships, and so you had two really great people that couldn't find a way to find harmony. So that was the hardest part for me because I never saw myself not being a husband, right? So when I got to that place, I was really angry, but I didn't want to go hurt people. I didn't want to go, run the streets. I didn't want to go sleep with a bunch of women because I felt it. I felt that need to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the path, but I had a week. I had a week. Then I was like, yo, this is not like this is not it. Like this is what I'm gonna do with my life. This, I'm gonna be 40 years old running around like sleeping with them. That's not it. So I was like, oh, first I'm gonna take 30 days and I'm gonna ask myself, like, when's the last time I asked myself, Wayne, what do you need? And maybe you don't even like those things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
How about you discover stuff? And I just like, all right, I'm gonna go 30 days. Oh, I'm gonna go 90 days. And then I just got into a rhythm. I just forgot about the problems and the things that I thought was attacking me. I had built an armor. So, those things that, I might have saw as weakness, I just got better in those things. And when I came out on the other side, I just was different. And I think that, habitually for men, sometimes we do get into right, like, I mean, 24/7. People like, that's pastor, that's my pastor. So like you never like get to come out of that space, you know what I mean? Like, or Wayne, you're a trainer. Like I never get the time to come out of that space and like I gotta be this role. I'm not the role. I'm somebody too. But you gotta take some time for you to say, what do I need? And then when you give that to
And Paul,
yourself, just
back into yourself.
you
That's
you
it.
you just I'm different. Not saying I was a bad person. I'm just different. Like, and I know the things that I checked off, and like I just came. I just got better. So I think that for most men, they never sit still enough to pull their own
Yeah.
layers back and see themselves, right? Be vulnerable with themselves to touch on those places where, okay, because like we often only do work on things that we're already good at. And sometimes you don't even know what you're not good at, right? Until you pull your own layers back. So I think that, you know, if you're having some stresses in your life, pull your own layers back and like, man, how can I get better at that? If you start to take your accountability, like, yo, then you're no longer a victim to stuff. Now you become a victor. Like if like certain like, you know, I don't want to keep us on too long, but you know, I have two kids by two different women, and like, you know, they got two different personalities, right? But the things that used to bother me before don't bother me now. It's not because they change, I change, right? So that's how life is for me. Like, or life, like somebody's gonna have that same personality type, and if that, you know, this girl had the same personality type, that's gonna bother me. That's gonna upset me. That's gonna stress me. I learned how to become different, and because I became different, the problems that or the way that other people talk, it doesn't affect me the same way. And I had to ask myself, why does that bother me? And once I started to identify that piece, and I pulled that layer about myself, like, yo, maybe some of the stuff did come from my childhood. Like, you know, my mother said something a certain kind of way, and that just carried, you know, so when somebody said it, it was the 8-year-old Wayne responded.
Right.
And when I saw that, and I peeled my own layers back, and made myself vulnerable with me, I became better as a human being, as a man, and actually became better in all my roles.
Okay.
Because when you
Go
work on yourself,
ahead.
your perspective changes, and so the way in which you see people, the way in which you see your partner, the way in which you see your kids, it changes because now you're looking at them from a different perspective with maybe a little bit more understanding of who they really are as opposed to what you thought you were seeing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So my takeaway from you, Wayne, is be vulnerable with yourself. From Fritz, it's to find a safe space. So figure out whatever that's going to be. You know, whether it's exercise, you know, therapy. Um, if you can't afford one-on-one group therapy, which is something that you mentioned, Father Drew, prayer, meditation, journaling, something like, don't hold in all of these repressed emotions because they'll manifest themselves in potentially negative ways, you know, that can do you harm in the long run. So with that said, thank you all for joining me, gentlemen. Um,
Appreciate you. Thank you.
so you know, welcome to come back anytime. But
Thank you.
we're wrapping up here, so you can see yourselves out.
Thank you
And
for having me.
don't forget to put your IGs in the chat
Got
if
it.
you're
Good
interested in
conversation.
following.
This is conversations that need to be had more often, I think.
Absolutely.
I need to talk about, you know, some stuff that the ladies do, but we're not talking about that this evening. We'll save that for another night.
uh,
But thank
Thank you.
y'all.
Good night.
Later. Good night.
How do I get out of here? Oh, I
X.
don't know how to exit. Oh, that's gotcha.
There should be an X in the corner. Maybe. Yep. Okay. Okay, so thank you all for hanging out on that extendo version of the Becky Brown Girl Show. Again, I thought it was a really good conversation, and that um, Father Drew and Wayne and Fritz all had good insight to share. I hope you did as well. Sorry I didn't get to go through as many of the comments as I originally intended, but anyway, I appreciate your patience and your support. And the full live will be available on my YouTube at Becky Brown Girl. So please go like, subscribe, and share. It should be up by tomorrow. Um, otherwise, I look forward to seeing y'all next Wednesday at 8ish. And have a good rest of your week. I'm out. Peace, two fingers.